The grand ballroom fell silent as Min Sujin walked down the aisle in her simple white dress. But she wasn't walking toward a groom in an expensive suit. Instead, her eyes were locked on Park Jin-woo, who stood at the altar wearing his only clean shirt and borrowed pants. The guests whispered loudly, their voices filled with shock and disgust. How could the daughter of Min Industries marry that nobody? She's throwing her life away. What will people say about our family? Sujin's stepmother, Mrs. Kong, stood up from her front row seat, her face red with anger. Stop this wedding right now, she screamed, pointing a shaking finger at Jin-woo. You're nothing but a delivery boy who rides a broken motorcycle. You don't deserve to breathe the same air as my stepdaughter. The crowd gasped as she continued her attack. Sujin, if you marry this poor rat, you'll never be welcome in our family again. Your father built this company from nothing, and you're about to destroy everything for some street trash. Tears rolled down Sujin's cheeks, but she kept walking toward Jin-woo, whose hands were trembling as he waited for her. Just as Sujin reached the altar and took Jin-woo's hands, her phone buzzed with an urgent message. Her face went completely white as she read it, and she looked up at Jin-woo with wide, shocked eyes. The message contained just 4 words that would change everything. He's not who you think he is. Sujin's hands shook as she stared at her phone. The message came from an unknown number, but somehow it felt like a warning from someone who knew a terrible secret. Jin-woo noticed her pale face and gently touched her arm. Sujin, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost, he whispered, his voice full of worry. She quickly put her phone away and forced a smile, but her heart was beating so fast she could barely breathe. The wedding guests were still whispering and pointing at them, but now she couldn't focus on their mean words. All she could think about was that message. I'm fine, she lied, squeezing Jin-woo's hands tighter. Let's continue with the ceremony. But as the pastor began to speak, Sujin's mind raced with questions. Who sent that message? What didn't she know about Jin-woo? They had been dating for 2 years, and he had always been honest about being poor. He worked 3 jobs just to buy her small gifts and take her to cheap restaurants. She loved him because he was kind, hardworking, and real, unlike the rich, spoiled men her family wanted her to marry. But now, doubt crept into her heart like poison. As the pastor asked if anyone objected to the marriage, a man in a black suit suddenly stood up in the back row. I object, he shouted, and everyone turned to stare at him. This marriage is built on lies. The entire wedding hall erupted in chaos. Guests jumped from their seats, craning their necks to see the mysterious man who had just destroyed the ceremony. Mrs. Kang's face lit up with evil satisfaction. Finally, someone else was trying to stop this embarrassing wedding. But Sujin felt her world spinning out of control. The stranger walked slowly down the aisle, his expensive leather shoes clicking against the marble floor. He was tall, handsome, and looked like he belonged in their wealthy world. Jin-woo's face had gone completely pale, and Sujin noticed his hands were now shaking worse than hers. Who are you? Sujin demanded, her voice breaking with emotion. What lies are you talking about? The man stopped just a few feet away from them and smiled coldly. My name is Detective Lee Min-ho, and I've been investigating your precious Jin-woo for months. The crowd gasped loudly, and several people pulled out their phones to record everything. Jin-woo isn't just a poor delivery boy struggling to survive. He's been lying to you about everything, his job, his family, his entire life story. Detective Lee pulled out a thick folder from his jacket. This man has been playing a very dangerous game, and you, Miss Min, have been his target from the very beginning. Sujin felt like the ground was disappearing beneath her feet. She looked at Jin-woo, searching his eyes for answers, for some sign that this was all a terrible mistake. But instead of denying the accusations, Jin-woo just stood there in silence, his face filled with guilt and shame. Jin-woo, she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks, tell me he's lying. Tell me this isn't true. But when Jin-woo finally opened his mouth to speak, the words that came out shattered her heart into a million pieces. Sujin. I'm so sorry. There's something I should have told you a long time ago. The wedding hall was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Everyone held their breath, waiting for Jin-woo's confession. Sujin's heart pounded in her chest as she stared at the man she thought she knew better than anyone. 2 years ago, when we first met at that coffee shop, Jin-woo began, his voice shaking with emotion. It wasn't an accident. I was sent there to find you. Mrs. Kong covered her mouth in shock, while Soo-jin felt like she couldn't breathe. Sent by who? She managed to whisper. Jin-woo looked down at his feet, unable to meet her eyes. By your father's business rival, Chairman Park. He wanted me to get close to you, to make you fall in love with me, so I could steal your family's company secrets. Detective Lee stepped forward, opening his folder. Jin-woo isn't really a delivery boy. He's actually Park Jin-woo, Chairman Park's younger son. He graduated from Harvard Business School and has been working as a corporate spy for his father's company. The guests gasped and started talking loudly among themselves. Soo-jin felt her legs getting weak, and she had to grab onto a nearby chair to keep from falling. Everything was fake, she asked, her voice barely audible. Jin-woo finally looked up at her, and she could see tears in his eyes too. At first, yes. It was all fake. But Soo-jin, somewhere along the way, I really did fall in love with you. That part was never fake. Don't you dare. Soo-jin screamed, surprising everyone with her sudden anger. Don't you dare tell me you love me after admitting you've been lying to me for 2 whole years. She pulled off her engagement ring and threw it at his feet. You made me believe I was marrying someone real, someone honest. But you're just another rich boy playing games with people's hearts. She turned to run away, but Detective Lee blocked her path. Miss Min, I'm afraid there's more. Jin-woo's mission wasn't just to steal company secrets. According to our investigation, he was also supposed to. He paused dramatically, looking directly at Jin-woo. He was supposed to ruin your family completely and then disappear forever. The wedding hall exploded with shocked gasps and angry whispers. Mrs. Kong fainted and had to be caught by 2 guests, while Soo-jin's uncle started shouting about calling the police. But Soo-jin just stood frozen, staring at Jin-woo with pure hatred in her eyes. Is that true? She asked in a voice so cold it made everyone shiver. Were you planning to destroy my family and then just vanish like I meant nothing to you? Jin-woo's face crumpled with pain, and he reached out toward her desperately. Soo-jin, please let me explain. Yes, that was the original plan, but everything changed when I got to know you. I tried to back out of the mission months ago, but my father threatened to stop. Soo-jin cut him off, backing away from his outstretched hand like he was poison. I don't want to hear any more of your lies. Detective Lee pulled out his phone and showed everyone a recording. This is a conversation between Jin-woo and his father from last week. Listen carefully. Chairman Park's voice filled the silent hall through the speaker. Son, the wedding is the perfect opportunity. After you marry her, you'll have access to all their family assets and business secrets. Then you can transfer everything to our company and file for divorce. The Min family will be ruined, and we'll finally have our revenge for what they did to us 20 years ago. Everyone gasped, but then Jin-woo's voice could be heard clearly. Father, I can't do this anymore. I love her too much to hurt her like this. But Chairman Park's cruel laughter echoed through the room. Love. Don't be ridiculous. You do exactly as I say, or I'll make sure that girl suffers in ways you can't imagine. Soo-jin's face turned deadly pale as she realized the horrible truth. Jin-woo hadn't just been lying about loving her, he had been planning to steal everything from her family and leave her with nothing. But the recording also revealed something else that made her heart skip a beat. Jin-woo had tried to protect her, which meant, maybe his feelings really were genuine after all. Before anyone could react to the recording, an elderly man's voice boomed from the entrance of the wedding hall. That's enough. Everyone turned to see Soo-jin's father, Chairman Min Tae-ho, walking slowly down the aisle with his walking stick. His face was pale and tired, but his eyes burned with an anger that made everyone step back. He had been too sick to attend the wedding, but somehow he had dragged himself here. Chairman Park, he called out, even though the man wasn't physically present. After 20 years, you're still trying to destroy my family through my innocent daughter. Soo-jin ran to her father, tears streaming down her face. Dad, what happened 20 years ago? What does Chairman Park want revenge for? Chairman Min looked at Jin-woo with a mixture of pity and disgust. Your father and I used to be best friends and business partners. We built our companies together, shared everything, trusted each other completely. His voice grew heavy with old pain. But 20 years ago, Park's company was going bankrupt because of his gambling addiction and bad business decisions. He begged me to save him, and like a fool, I agreed. I gave him millions of dollars from my own company to help him. The crowd listened in complete silence as the old man continued. But instead of using the money to save his business, Park used it to bet everything on a risky investment. He lost every single penny and then blamed me for his failure. He claimed I had sabotaged him on purpose, that I had set him up to fail so I could take over his company. The worst part, Chairman Min said, his voice breaking with emotion, is that Park spread lies about me throughout the business world. He told everyone I had stolen his ideas, his money, and his success. Many people believed him, and I almost lost everything I had worked for. He looked directly at Jin-woo, who was now crying openly. Your father swore he would get his revenge by taking away the thing I loved most, my family. And now, 20 years later, he's using his own son as a weapon against my daughter. The hall was completely silent except for the sound of people crying. But then Chairman Min said something that shocked everyone, including Sujin. Jin-woo, despite what your father has done, I can see in your eyes that you truly love my daughter. The question is, are you brave enough to choose her over your father's revenge? All eyes were on Jin-woo as he stood trembling in his borrowed suit. The weight of 20 years of family hatred pressed down on his shoulders like a mountain. Sujin watched him through her tears, her heart breaking as she saw the war raging in his eyes. She wanted to hate him, to walk away and never look back, but seeing him struggle between love and family loyalty made her chest ache with pain. Jin-woo slowly walked toward Chairman Min, each step heavy with the knowledge that his next words would either heal 2 decades of wounds or destroy any chance of happiness forever. Chairman Min, he began, his voice barely above a whisper, my father raised me to believe that your family had ruined our lives. Every day since I was a child, he filled my head with stories of betrayal and revenge. The wedding guests held their breath as Jin-woo continued. But these past 2 years with Sujin, she showed me what real love looks like. She taught me about kindness, about putting others before yourself, about being brave enough to choose what's right instead of what's easy. He turned to face his bride, whose makeup was streaked with tears. Sujin, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I've broken your trust in the worst possible way. But I'm done being my father's puppet. He pulled out his phone and, in front of everyone, called his father. When Chairman Park answered, Jin-woo put the call on speaker for everyone to hear. Father, I'm calling off the mission. I won't destroy the Min family, and I won't marry Sujin to steal from them. If you want revenge, you'll have to find another way. Chairman Park's furious voice exploded through the phone, you ungrateful fool. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me. Fine. If you choose that girl over your own family, then you're no longer my son. And mark my words, I'll make sure both you and that precious girlfriend of yours suffer for this betrayal. The line went dead, leaving the wedding hall in stunned silence. Jin-woo had just given up everything, his family, his inheritance, his future, for love. But as he looked at Sujin's shocked face, one terrifying question remained, was it already too late for forgiveness? Sujin stared at Jin-woo in complete shock, her mind racing to process what had just happened. He had defied his own father, thrown away his entire life, and made himself an enemy of his own family, all for her. The wedding guests whispered frantically among themselves, but their voices sounded like distant echoes to her. All she could hear was the sound of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Part of her wanted to run into his arms and forgive him for everything, but another part of her felt like the betrayal was too deep, the lies too painful to ever forget. Sujin, Jin-woo whispered, taking a careful step toward her, I know what I did was unforgivable. I know I hurt you in ways that can never be undone. But please give me a chance to spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Tears streamed down Sujin's face as she struggled with the hardest decision of her life. She looked at her father, who nodded encouragingly, then at her stepmother, who was shaking her head in disgust. Everyone was waiting for her answer, but how could she choose between her broken heart and the love she still felt for him? Jin-woo, she finally spoke, her voice trembling with emotion, "You say you love me, but love isn't built on lies. For 2 years, I fell in love with a person who didn't even exist. How can I trust that the real you will love me the same way the fake you did?" Jinwoo's face crumpled with pain at her words, but before he could answer, the wedding hall doors burst open with a loud crash. A group of men in black suits stormed into the hall, led by a tall, cruel-looking man with silver hair. "There's my disappointing son," Chairman Park sneered as he walked down the aisle like he owned the place. His cold eyes scanned the shocked crowd before settling on Sujin with pure hatred. "So you're the little princess who turned my boy against his own family. Well, since Jinwoo has made his choice, I suppose it's time for you to face the consequences." He snapped his fingers, and his men started moving towards Sujin menacingly. Jinwoo immediately jumped in front of her, spreading his arms to protect her. "Father, stop. You said you'd leave her alone if I walked away from the mission." But Chairman Park's evil smile sent chills down everyone's spine. "I lied." The wedding hall erupted in panic as guests screamed and ran toward the exits, but Chairman Park's men blocked all the doors. Sujin grabbed Jinwoo's hand, her earlier anger forgotten in the face of real danger. Whatever pain he had caused her, she could see that he was genuinely terrified for her safety, not his own. "Father, please," Jinwoo begged, his voice breaking with desperation. "Take your anger out on me, not on her. She's innocent in all of this." Chairman Park laughed coldly and pulled out a thick envelope from his jacket. "Innocent? This little princess is the daughter of the man who destroyed my life. Her father stole everything from me, and now I'm going to take everything from him, starting with his precious daughter." He threw the envelope at Chairman Min's feet. "Those are the real financial documents from 20 years ago. They prove that your innocent father deliberately sabotaged my business deals to make himself richer." Chairman Min picked up the envelope with shaking hands, his face turning pale as he read the documents. The wedding guests who hadn't escaped yet watched in stunned silence as the truth unfolded. These documents are fake," Chairman Min whispered, but his voice lacked conviction. Detective Lee stepped forward and examined the papers carefully. "Sir, I'm afraid these documents appear to be authentic. They show evidence of market manipulation and insider trading that directly benefited your company while destroying Chairman Park's business." The room spun around Sujin as she realized that her father, the man she had always seen as honest and kind, might have actually ruined Jinwoo's family on purpose. "Now do you understand?" Chairman Park said with twisted satisfaction. "My son was supposed to marry you and take everything your family owns, just like your father took everything from us. But since Jinwoo has chosen to betray his own blood..." He signaled to his men, who started moving closer to Sujin. "I just have to settle for making sure you disappear forever." Jinwoo pushed Sujin behind him and faced his father with more courage than he had ever shown in his life. "If you want to hurt her, you'll have to go through me first." But as Chairman Park pulled out a gun from his jacket, Jinwoo realized that his father had always been willing to do exactly that. Time seemed to slow down as Chairman Park pointed the gun at his own son. The remaining wedding guests screamed and ducked behind chairs, while Sujin felt her heart stop beating in her chest. She couldn't believe that a father could actually point a weapon at his own child, but the cold hatred in Chairman Park's eyes showed he was deadly serious. "You were supposed to be my greatest weapon," he said to Jinwoo, his voice filled with disappointment and rage. "I raised you, educated you, gave you everything, and this is how you repay me. By choosing the enemy's daughter over your own family." Jinwoo didn't move or flinch, even with the gun aimed directly at his heart. "Father, if loving someone innocent makes me your enemy, then I'd rather be your enemy than your son." Suddenly, Chairman Min stepped forward despite his weak health, placing himself between the gun and the young couple. "Park, stop this madness right now," he shouted, his voice stronger than anyone had heard in years. "If you want to blame someone for what happened 20 years ago, blame me. Don't punish these children for the mistakes their parents made." Chairman Park's hand trembled slightly, but he kept the gun steady. "You think I don't remember, Min? You think I forgot how you smiled at my face while stabbing me in the back? You made me lose everything, my company, my reputation, my pride. My wife left me because of the shame you caused, and I had to raise Jinwoo alone, feeding him stories of revenge just to keep myself sane. The wedding hall was completely silent except for the sound of people crying and Chairman Park's heavy breathing. But then something unexpected happened that changed everything. Sujin slowly walked out from behind Jinwoo, her wedding dress flowing behind her like she was floating on air. She looked directly at Chairman Park, her eyes filled with tears but also with a strange kind of peace. "Mr. Park," she said in a soft but clear voice, "I don't know what my father did or didn't do 20 years ago. But I know that hurting me won't bring back what you lost. It will only create more pain for everyone, including Jinwoo." She held out her hand toward the gun, and everyone gasped in terror. "If you really need someone to pay for your suffering, then take me. But please, let Jinwoo live his life free from this hatred." Chairman Park's hand shook violently as he stared at Sujin's brave face. For a moment, he saw not the daughter of his enemy, but a pure-hearted young woman willing to die for love. The gun felt heavier in his grip as memories of his own youth flooded back. He had once loved someone with the same fierce devotion that Jinwoo showed for Sujin. His late wife had been the only person who could calm his anger, and seeing this girl's selfless courage reminded him of what he had lost to his own hatred. You would really die for him," he whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. "Even after knowing he lied to you, deceived you, planned to destroy your family." Sujin nodded without hesitation. "Love isn't about the past, Mr. Park. It's about choosing to forgive and build something beautiful together, even when it's hard." Tears began streaming down Chairman Park's weathered face as 20 years of anger finally began to crumble. Jinwoo watched in amazement as his father, the cold, ruthless man who had raised him on revenge, slowly lowered the gun. I've spent so many years teaching my son to hate," Chairman Park sobbed, falling to his knees. "I turned him into a weapon instead of letting him be happy. I've become the very monster I accused your father of being." He looked up at Chairman Min with broken eyes. "Min, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. The hatred has poisoned my heart for too long." Chairman Min, despite his own pain from the revelations about his past, walked over and helped his former friend to his feet. "Park, we've both made mistakes. But maybe it's not too late to choose forgiveness over revenge." The two old men embraced for the first time in 20 years, their tears washing away decades of bitterness. Jinwoo ran to Sujin and pulled her into his arms, both of them crying with relief and joy. "Sujin, you saved us all," he whispered against her hair. "Your courage broke the cycle of hatred that was destroying our families." As the police arrived to handle Chairman Park's men peacefully, called by Detective Lee, the broken families began to heal. 6 months later, Jinwoo and Sujin had a second wedding, this time with both their fathers walking them down the aisle together, proving that love really can conquer even the deepest wounds. True love isn't about perfection or never making mistakes. It's about having the courage to choose forgiveness over revenge, healing over hatred, and building a future together despite a painful past. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is break the cycle of hurt and choose love instead. Did this story touch your heart? Share it with someone who needs to remember that love can heal even the deepest wounds. And don't forget to follow for more emotional Kdrama stories that will make you believe in the power of true love.